Welcome everybody to the November 9th, 2020 meeting for the Van Wert City Council. We're going to begin with our invocation by Pastor Keith Stoller, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would please rise.
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful again this evening that you've granted grace and strength and health to be able to gather together in this meeting this evening. We thank you for each administration member, for each member of the City Council. And Father, we pray, as we always do, for your goodness and grace and wisdom to guide every decision, every discussion. We pray that decisions will be made with tenderness and compassion and for the good of the overall city. We're thankful most of all, Father, for your great grace in our individual lives. We're thankful for our relationship with you, and our hearts are thankful for your great grace in each of our lives. Bless this meeting, we pray, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Drew, please call the roll.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mr. Callis? Here. Mr. Penn?
Here.
Mr. Eggler? Here. Mrs. Murgy?
Here.
Mr. Hellman? Mr. Davis?
Here.
I did receive word that Mr. Hellman would not be here this evening, so I need a motion to excuse him.
So moved.
Mr. Eggler, second by Mr. Marshall. Let's call the roll.
Mr. Eggler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Oh, everybody was provided the agenda for this evening's meeting dated November 9th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Motion to accept?
Motion to accept by Mrs. Murgy, second by Mr. Eggler. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Eggler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Also, prior to this evening's meeting, everybody was given the minutes from our last meeting dated October 26th, 2020. Any additions, corrections to those minutes?
Motion to accept is read.
Motion to accept by Mrs. Murgy, second by Mr. Eggler. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Eggler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Comments, communications, and petitions. I received one. Jay, are you going to talk about this planning commission during your report?
I sure can.
Okay. I received a letter from the planning commission. Both the mayor and the safety service director are on that, requesting a public hearing. I'm sorry. Held a public hearing earlier today to discuss the petition for zoning, conditional zoning for the annexation for Alliance. And they've asked for a meeting for judiciary and annexation, a committee meeting for judiciary and annexation for December 14th at 6:15 to discuss the annexation and zoning to, is it a zoning change from
Well, it's new zoning
new zoning?
in view of annexation.
Okay, so a proposed zoning to I-2 for that piece of property.
Can I just wrap?
Yeah,
this
just
up?
might as well just do it right now.
Alliance is requesting the annexation, and there's a thing in our code that allows them to also request permanent zoning upon annexation. Zoning typically comes in as residential. They want to cut a step out and come in as I-2 because they're a factory. So the planning commission today approved that request to come in as I-2 upon annexation. I believe that just needs to be referenced in the final ordinance when passed accepting annexation. I don't think we need another ordinance for zoning.
I imagine that's correct.
Yes. So-
We'll run it by Mr. Hatcher when he's
Right, so we
back.
don't need to do anything else except for this hearing that's been requested.
So, Joy, after you schedule that, if you give that back to me so I can put it with the minutes. I just gave that to you so you have the date and time that they're requesting
Okay.
for your report. Any other comments, communications, petitions from council? From public?
Is that hearing open to the public for when they come in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and Mrs. Murgy will we'll officially schedule that during her report since it's her committee. Administrative reports, Mayor, Mr. Ken Markwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an update from Stacy Adam concerning home guards. Council. They were able to, to review. She didn't want to have just a couple of bids and have them come in high, so she took the action to send out the information to as many different places as she had in her awareness, as well as other people that might bid on it. So they were able to get 13 bids from companies from 5 different states. And their preliminary estimate that they've been working with was $402,000. The bulk of the bids came in the range of from $350,000 to $450,000. The winning bid, which was awarded to a company from Louisville, Kentucky, was for just $288,000. So compared to the 402 that they had been imagining, this was quite a pleasant surprise. The requirements of the bid were that they would begin November 15th, but that's a Sunday, so it's possible that may not be the starting date. But that then they have 60 days from that time to have the project finished. 60? Yeah. And that was another thing they worked in. They think it'll take less than that, but they thought if they spec'd it at 30 days, it might cause a busy contractor not to bid and drive the price up. So tomorrow, she has a meeting with the contractor, and they'll be able to work out a few more of the details as far as the timing. There's a lot of parts with the AEP building just behind it, the hair salons nearby, the AEP connections, the gas connections, all that. So there's a lot to do. You may not see anything for a while, but contractor meetings tomorrow. Also, as a follow-up from last week's election, I did send a letter to the 16 people who were on the ballot for the Charter Commission, thanking them for their willingness to serve if called upon, which apparently won't be necessary now. And just want to let you know that. Sent that on behalf of the city. That's all I have.
Okay. Any questions from council for the mayor? From the public? Thank you, Ken. Safety Service Director, Mr. Jay Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. President. First thing I need is I am a member of the State Issue 1 District 13 group. That sounds lofty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of the Public Works Commission. That's a group that every year we get approximately $400,000 that comes into Van County. We see that money about every 4 years. It comes into the city. It rotates around different parts of the county. We need to annually update an ordinance that says that I'm the person serving on that committee and the mayor is my alternate if I'm not available.
Sure.
So I can get that to Mr. Hatcher, but I need that ordinance to be requested and it doesn't need to be an emergency. We can run it through.
Do you remember who requested it last time?
Judiciary annexation. So just an ordinance to allow, to appoint Safety Service Director as, to the Issue 1 District 13 Public Works Commission. And I'll clean that up.
Yep.
And the mayor is an alternate. Also, it's probably another one for Joy, we want to make a request that the salary ordinance process begin. We'll bring some salary ordinance changes for the next meeting, but we want to get that ordinance requested tonight to get that started for both the safety ordinance and the service ordinance.
That's usually finance.
Okay, sorry, Joy, you're right, it's a yes.
Yeah, that'd be you.
She was finance.
Yeah.
I did my time.
Request that both salary ordinances be prepared for the safety and then the service. I guess service comes first and then the safety.
Just request salary ordinances.
Yeah, just request
Be
salaries
prepped.
to be prepared for 2021, that's all.
Yeah.
There just happens to be 2 of them.
All right.
We looked, Mr. Helm, I had some things for him tonight, but we looked at putting the speed trailer up on Urban Road. There was a request for some speeding there, and we've already got that put away for the winter so that we can still have at least keep a little better presence there and try to stop that. Same thing with Mendon Road. I am meeting with the Ridge Township trustees on Friday morning at their meeting to discuss that potential speed limit change on Mendon Road. So I'll report next meeting how that went with them. Had a request for Middle Street that the recycling trucks were having a problem getting down there to pick up recycling boxes. I've looked at it, the mayor's looked at it. It's kind of iffy. I'm not sure how to handle this. I'm not sure that it's bad enough to just tonight ask for an ordinance to say parking on one side of the street. If you would, maybe take a look at that, if you get a chance to drive down there. The middle's over in Second Ward between Moberly and Cable. It's a north-south street,
Just west of Burt.
just west
Yeah.
of Burke.
Yep.
And we can schedule a meeting to talk about this more. I mean, it's kind of a big deal to say no parking, and the day I was down there, the truck should have made it. The mayor had some pictures today that it might have been tight. And in fact, they didn't go down, some didn't get picked up, right?
It appeared
Appeared that way.
that part of the street got picked up and part didn't.
So I'm not opposed to fixing the problem, but make sure it's just because somebody,
We're wondering what happened recently.
yeah, we've been picking up, what'd you say,
Well, it's been more than 20 years.
more than 20 years, we've been recycling trucks going down that street, and now we can't get down there, so. And maybe some community effort, I don't know if that's,
I don't know. Look at me, I think we should only park on one side of every street all the way through town.
well, it does help at times, yes, there's places it helps.
So that'd be my argument.
So take a look at that, let's talk about that more at the next meeting. And, shouldn't apologize, but I will. I apologize, I know parts of town are having some taste and odor issues with the water. We've been dealing with some late fall algae bloom, a little different than we're used to seeing. It's a strange year all the way around. We typically don't have 6 feet of water out of the reservoirs in November, followed by almost 80-degree weather in November, and so it's just, we just need to pump some water, and we're taking steps to up the treatment to take care of that, and it's hard. I don't know what part of town, today, this morning, for the first time I noticed it at my house. I had not noticed it, period, since it began about 7 to 10 days ago, so. Maybe some of you know what I'm talking about, maybe some of you don't. So,
Nothing dangerous, just.
no, it's just, yeah, it's an aesthetic issue. And the last thing about water rates, I want to request that we, well, what I want to request is that council considers that we add $1 to each water bill to the water side and $1 to the sewer side to the minimum bill of our water bills. Because of that, we want to earmark that as towards this meter replacement program. Instead of doing percentage increases, everybody is going to benefit by getting a new meter, so that's why I think it's most fair to collect that revenue there. $1, which is basically a $2 increase on your bill per month, generates about $112,000 a year. It'd be about $1.2 million generated over a 10-year loan we'd have to get for the project. It would make up the difference. It's about a $1.5 to $1.6 million project. The balance of that would come out of monies reserved already, or monies that we have in the water and sewer fund. So that money in the water and sewer fund helps us borrow less money. But I want to go ahead and get the rates set, start collecting that January 1 bill. So I'm not sure exactly when we're going to be able to bid that project, but our goal is to get it done in '21.
Okay.
But we need to start putting money in there to get building towards that. So we don't have the water and sewer.
And since, yeah, we don't have water and sewer, so those financial type things now fall under your committee. I'll just talk to that. I don't know how, but I got one of the new meters,
Right.
and I've easily saved way more than $2 a month. On being, and I don't know that I'm actually saving
No.
it, but I'm actually paying it's.
You feel better about what
Yes.
you're paying.
Yes, because I'm paying what we actually use as opposed to, estimate, and then pay. It's a much better system.
Way overdue. I mean, we've got to move this direction and get it taken care of.
A question on the meter.
Yeah.
So if you're paying the minimum with the new meters, if you don't use the minimum, are you gonna change it? Is the bill gonna be changed? So you'll still pay for more than what you're using if you don't use the minimum?
Well, the minimum is, that charges the cost of providing water. It's really, yes, it's based on a unit volume, but there's still cost there that everybody incurs to have a water plant and a sewer plant.
Yeah.
So that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Just wondered.
Well, I don't want to get detailed. Go ahead.
I think what she's asking is if the minimum bill is $35, now the minimum bill is gonna be $36.
37.
37, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what you're asking, yeah.
Well, I just thought maybe with the new meters, it's gonna tell you how much actual water you use. And if you don't use what they consider a minimum, then
But that's,
say you're only using about $20 worth.
Well, but the
Instead of
minimum,
$36.
but our minimum is 30, whatever our minimum is now.
No matter what.
You
But
get
it-
the
Yeah,
minimum
that's,
bill
yeah, I
is
got
for,
that, yeah.
for the first 1,000 cubic feet of water.
yeah, I mean, you have, when you bill like that with a minimum, what you have is there's two different things you're paying for. You have a fixed cost and then a variable cost. So everybody pays the fixed cost, which, and a fixed cost, your house payment is a fixed cost. Doesn't matter if you stay there one night or 31 nights, you still pay the same house payment. That's the minimum. And then when you have a larger family, your variable rate goes up. So your variable rate on your home would be things like electricity. If you have all the lights on, you would have higher expenses.
I get that. I just thought I don't know what so the amount of water that they think you're using for minimum is a certain amount, but if you
Well,
don't even come close to that.
It's probably better off to think about the minimum as the ability to flush your toilets and turn on water rather than the actual water that you're using, because we still have to run the plants.
That's exactly what it
Yeah.
is. We need
Well,
a
I
plan.
understand that. I just,
Yeah.
I just.
And you're gonna pay the minimum whether you use any water or not.
Yeah. And that's just a habit in your house.
Yeah, I know.
Mr. Jared?
I don't have a question about the need to cover the cost, but I'm wondering if the money's already there or not. And I think Martha could answer that question, what the current balances are in water and sewer.
Jay knows what's being planned for the future. I don't know what's being
Yeah, I
planned for
mean-
the future.
We're not at the end of the year yet, and well, I guess the point of the dollar, it doesn't matter if the money's there or not, which I don't believe that it is. I'm not willing to go bid a job based on that money's all in the bank. But with EPA and our aging plants, we've got numerous things we can spend money on. So if we are a little heavy on the dollar charge, there's plenty of, for instance, we're upgrading some electrical components just to run one pump that costs $50,000. So, and we have 8 pumps at the water plant that could be in play here. So we're trying to replace these things before they go bad and before they ought to be done at one time. So that's what some of this, what you're perceiving as a surplus is being used.
Last time I heard about a balance, the water and sewer plants were somewhere in the 3.6 million category. That's why I was commenting on that. I don't know what it is now, and,
But I want to remember, we try to keep a healthy balance there because we're still riding out peaks and valleys, which are droughts and wet years. It can shift $300,000-400,000 based on whether it rained or not in the summer. So if we spend all that and we have a drought and don't sell water, we find ourselves short. So I've always tried to be proactive at the end and have some money in the bank.
But to answer your question, Joe, the water fund right now has a balance of 1.4 million, and the sewer fund has 2.9 million.
down 400,000 from last time.
But that doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Martha, that doesn't mean that money is just sitting there ready to be
Absolutely.
spent today.
That's what I said. I don't know what's planned. I know we still have loan payments that we pay in December.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because that's the fund balance, not the unencumbered.
Correct.
correct,
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, I wish I had that kind of money, we wouldn't be talking about a rating.
Yeah.
That's all I have to report.
So, go ahead, Jeff.
It was brought to my attention, I'm not a second ward, but I checked out a house on 2nd Street today, in between Jefferson and, what is it, Schaefer, or whatever it is, and I went down it, and there's 2 crossovers in that block, and the potholes are pretty bad. I went down through there, and that block in between Jefferson and going west, whatever that street is, what is that street, Schaefer? No, it ain't Schaefer, it's
Shaker's off by Monroe.
Monroe, it's Monroe Street. The block in between Monroe and Jefferson, 2nd Street, is pretty bad. Bunch of potholes in that, bunch of them,
Okay,
Cold patch potholes.
yeah.
yeah, I'll get it to him.
Any other questions for the Safety Service Director?
Any kind of update on Franklin Park prosecution or?
I don't have an update to that yet.
Okay.
Is that it, Jay?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Auditor, Mrs. Martha Valiant.
You should all have a copy in front of you of the October 31st bank reconcilement. The first page of that report shows that we had $12.9 million on the books and $12.9 million in the various bank accounts and investments. The next 2 pages is the cash position report. All funds did have a positive balance at the end of October as required. The next page is a comparison of general fund revenues to last year at this same point in time. And as you can see, there's a lot of red on this report. We are down about 5% on taxes, which is pretty much what we had projected. We assumed we would be 10%. We're down 5% from what we collected last year. We projected we would be down 10% from our projection, which our original projection was a 4% increase for 2020. So we're pretty much where we thought we were going to be at the beginning of the COVID. The next page just shows that we have actually spent $288,000 more in the general fund than what we have taken in, which is, again, is what we had anticipated. Last month, Mr. Tomlinson asked if we had looked at the other funds other than the general fund to see where we were compared to last year. So the next couple pages are all the other funds, which, if you look at that, there's a lot of red on there too. There's 2 funds that have more money than what they did the prior year, and that's Fund 201 and 204. Both of those receive gas tax. And since the gas tax was increased last year, both of those are about 25% higher than what they were last year, which is good because that helps our street department. And then, of course, the CARES grant dollars that we didn't have last year. So that just kind of gives you an idea of where we are with all the other funds. The other report that I ran, which I don't know, Jeff, if you want me to, if we want to talk about the budget now or you want to talk about it in your report, but I ran for everybody the proposed budget for 2021 at the level council approves it. I did post the line-by-line version on Google Drive, although I think some of you had trouble accessing that, so I'm not sure everybody saw that. So I just thought I'd print this out so you'd have a hard copy in front of you. So do we want to look at that now, Jeff, or do you want to talk about it in your report, or?
Whatever, we can talk about it now.
Can you address the,
Yeah, I can.
just please?
There's a couple lines that Mr. Tomlinson thought needed clarification.
So, so basically when I looked through this, I looked at large increases that were actually large dollar amounts. So if there's a 200% increase, but it goes from, $100 to $300, that's, so I highlighted, I don't know, half a dozen of them that I asked Martha just to communicate on, that were, just to make sure that everybody's aware of the significant increases.
Which I do have comments in the far right column. on those funds. The ones that are highlighted in yellow, those are one-time projects or one-time monies from 2020 that we won't see again. The CARES grant's the first one of those that's highlighted. The first question John had was on Fund 301, why there is an increase in personal services and fringe benefits. Over the years, we have split the salaries for the street department between Fund 201, which has the gas tax and license plate tax, and the 301, which is the street fund. In 2020, we charged 100% of those wages to Fund 201 because we had a higher carryover balance, plus we were going to see this increase in gas tax. That's not going to pan out for 2021, the way the estimates look. So in 21, we're going to be charging 30% of those salaries to the 301 fund and only 70% to the 201 fund. So that's what that increase is about. The other question was in the sewer fund. They had a large increase. They are purchasing a new vac truck. I'm not sure, Jay, what's a vac truck?
Well, it's a big,
Sucks the sewer out?
sucks the sewers and jets the water in, and it's a big elaborate piece of equipment, yes.
Okay.
The other question was in the Fund 801, which is the ESID fund. That was a new fund last year. Those are those PACE energy projects. And this year we only had one payment, which was the project at the hospital. Next year we have a second payment, which is the retirement center out there at Wert North. So that's what that increase is. I think those were the only ones you questioned, John?
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
okay. A lot of the differences in salaries and fringe benefits come from the fact that in 2020 we had 27 pay periods. So even when putting in increases for 2021, sometimes those salaries and fringe benefits actually went down from last year. We had no change in our health insurance for 2021, so we won't have any big increase for that. There's really nothing out of the ordinary, I don't think, in the budget proposal. Did you, Jay, did you think
No,
there was any?
No, not yet.
I mean, the ones that I asked you to talk about were the only ones that jumped out at me.
So we will need to ask, Jeff, you'll need to ask for that to be prepared, and it can go through 3 readings, and then we'll just need to pass it at the last meeting in December. Which I think we could pass it as permanent. I don't really see any reason for it to be temporary.
That'd be fine with us, yeah, because we got a few meetings here.
This,
Chairs.
I'm going to, on my report then, I want to put code enforcement in the law enforcement. I want to put, because, well, we can talk about it now, or I can talk about it in my report. I'm pretty disgusted with,
You can't reduce the number of police officers, and you can't add to staff. I'm not sure how you're going to do that.
why can't we add the staff? We ain't adding staff.
If you're reducing the number of police officers,
We ain't gonna
you can't-
reduce the number of police, you're gonna do both.
Well,
yeah.
The police officer is gonna, he'll be a police officer the rest of the day, 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day, he's gonna focus on code enforcement. So someone's not driving by a house that's got a chair in between the curb and sidewalk. He'll be responsible for going up there, knocking on the door and taking care of that instead of going through.
can I ask you a question? What do you think the police is going to do with that couch or chair that Bill Lawson's not doing with code enforcement now?
He's gonna go up and knock on the door and tell them that a policeman can write a citation out.
I don't.
Bill Lawson
that's
can.
true.
If it's in our ordinances that that's the same as a speeding ticket, same as squealing your tires, same as,
I think we need to understand what the abilities are, because I've always been told, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been here a long time, these code enforcement things aren't ticketable offenses. You can't go by and say your grass is tall, here's a $120 ticket. You have to give notice and allow time for removal.
I don't think, well, maybe
So
on grass
let's get to the
and
bottom of
weeds.
that.
Maybe on grass and weeds, but I don't think so on blocking a sidewalk or,
Oh,
or,
blocking the
or,
sidewalk, that's
or,
not bad.
or, that's the same thing as being in the middle of the, between the sidewalk and the
With all due
curb.
respect, if it's blocking the sidewalk, that, we can take action right now.
I'm,
If it's in the grass, we can't, it's not the same situation.
we are reactive and not proactive, and it's never gonna change. I'll tell you what's got me, last Thursday, I went up and talked to the law director. He sent out a letter to you, I sent it to Ken, sent it to Bill, that if the police department gets this letter out to the tenant and gives them 5 days' notice, I can go down there and clean up that property. So, and John sent that, John Hatcher said that's perfectly legal. Did you get the email? I sent it to Ken, because I called you up last Friday and asked him, I said, can you see to it that the police department delivers that letter? Because I want that property cleaned up. Well, it was all last week. Clear blue sky, last week would have been the perfect opportunity to get that yard mowed. They've added trash to that pile over there. So there's a week went by, so I'm gonna question, did the police department deliver that letter? And if he didn't, I'd like to have the police chief up here next meeting to ask why he ain't delivering them letters. Nobody in here, I'm a citizen now, I was gonna call in tonight and sit out there. Nobody in here would put up with that crap that I'm putting across the street. And catty corner from me's been 6 years. We got an ordinance, and no, it's a joke. We have been fighting this since May.
Well, I'm just suggesting to you that putting code enforcement in the police
Well,
department doesn't.
it ain't working now. What we got now ain't working.
Is there a reason that can't happen? I mean, my brother was a police officer in a community this size, and that was part of their duties, was hanging door hangers, going up, knocking on the doors, saying, can we look at this, can we clean this up, leaving them their notice. But that first step's taken care of. It's taken care of by somebody in an official position that walks up and knocks on their door and says, can you take care of this? Is there any reason we can't do that?
When was your brother a police officer?
About 3 years ago.
This is just me talking now. I just think with the things that we're dealing with, and I'm not making light of tall grass or couches and sidewalks, there's a lot more serious stuff going on than that.
I mean, he was in the largest community per capita for drug addiction in Tills in West Virginia. I mean, it happens. He can
But
do it.
our police department is at their minimum staffing level.
Lower
So,
than that now, right now.
yes, they are. But even when they're at full staff, they're at the minimum staffing level, which was established in 2008.
I don't think what Jeff's getting at is we don't want them to handle the entire process. We don't even want them to go to step 2. Can they go up and knock on the door and?
No, here's my problem, and he's not here tonight. We can generate 200 code enforcement cases. We have not got anything through the court system. So it doesn't make any difference if the police generate 300 more. If they don't go through the court system, we've got nothing. That's where our focus needs to be. These people need to be brought in, no more fines. You know, my opinion is the verdict, or what's the word for it? The penalty needs to be, come back in 30 days with pictures of your cleaned up property. The ones we've gotten to court, we take a $120 fine, and guess what happens the day after that? The whole thing starts over again because they pay their fine, they don't pick one piece of trash up, and we gotta start back at zero again. That's not how we're gonna win this thing.
I know, I'll give you an example of another thing. And I'm not gonna mention his name, I don't wanna mention anybody's name. Guy across the street from the one that's got whiskers on it, has been a D1 for I say 5, it's probably been 8 years. He's got a van sitting in his driveway. That van ain't got no, it ain't got up-to-date tags on it. So, and we've been fighting him, you know what I mean, on keeping the nuisance property up there. So, but we drive by him, he won't answer. And instead of harassing him, instead of going up there, oh well, so he moves it out on the street. So I get a hold of Bill and say, hey, you moved that out in the street. The police went down there and said, I park it back in your yard, and you ain't got tags on it.
Well,
I don't know that we're
I don't know
gonna
where
fit-
we're going. You're
we're not
very
gonna-
close to the situation to make this city.
We're not gonna be able to decide answers tonight.
Well, I want to have a committee meeting, a committee of the whole, call it committee of the whole meeting and decide this. It ain't working now. And to me, the problem's got to get fixed.
We can schedule a committee of the whole. I'll look at the calendar and schedule one.
And we'll decide then. All of us will decide then what, if we want to, I'm not asking the police department to, and I'm going to be brutally honest, the police department, like when I go to Walmart, and he's sitting there at the Vantage, sitting in there waiting for a speeder to come by, well, instead of doing that, he can be down there knocking on that door saying, hey, you know, I'm not asking him to take away from any crime thing.
Okay, we can have that conversation. I'll schedule it once I look at the calendar.
Little comment on that.
Sure?
I believe you already read it then.
Yes.
Okay. Quick.
Yes, on average, we have, I think, 2 officers out at any given time, on average. 3 sometimes during the day.
Yeah.
Okay. That was during Martha's report.
Which I have
Are you
nothing
done?
else.
All right. Any other questions for the auditor? Thank you, Martha. Law director is not here. Any questions for the law director can be forwarded to me or administration. Committee reports, health service and safety, Mr. Bill Marshall.
Short report tonight. Basically, we've had very few code violations since my last report. However, we do have ones that are hanging, that have been around for about 4-6 months, one of which is the one that Mr. Egler's talking about. And we have sent out a summons one time, which was ignored, and now we've sent out the second summons. And each time they're not accepted. So unfortunately, the law director's not here but that's a discussion that I think I have to have with him. How are we going to handle this? Because, you know, you can't just avoid a summons. There has to be some way of getting this person notified, whether it's by U.S. mail, I don't know, or somebody from, maybe the health service and safety director goes up and knocks on the door and hands him one. I would do that. I don't know if I would be allowed to.
I do it too, but they're not gonna open the door for any of us.
Well, maybe if I'm,
I've
they
asked the
don't know
same
me.
question. You can't just ignore a summons and say, okay, I guess I'm done here. If I don't answer the door, everything goes back to normal. It can't be that way. There's got to be, and I've asked John that, so he needs to answer that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask you a question? Is a legal notice in the paper?
No.
Can you put a legal notice in the paper? Is that giving them legal notice? It does when
I think
if you owe money
could,
and they're
but we
looking
can't
for somebody,
Revised code.
can you put a legal notice in the paper saying so-and-so, and you got a summons to go to court on this property here, and if they want,
I don't think so, because we talked about that shaming ordinance before, and I don't think we're allowed to do that.
No.
well, because they do it with, if you owe money,
I just said if we had a charter, we could probably do it, but we can't do it now. Revised code, I don't think allows that.
Mr. Marshall?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have.
Okay.
But I'm sorry that the law director is not here, but I will be in touch with him when he comes back, and I'll follow up on this. It's got to stop. I mean, it's wrong. It's wrong that he's had to put up with it. Any neighbor has to put up with it. It's not just a councilman's neighbor, but anyone's neighbor.
Yes, I agree.
Yep,
So
so,
questions for health service and safety from council?
The only last comment I'll make, you know, I'm a councilman on that block, and the other neighbors, you know, I mean, they look at me and I you know what I mean? If I can't get anything done, what, you know? It's just very, very, very frustrating to say the least.
From the public, Mr. Jared?
With the property in question, what is the exact issue? I haven't even, I mean, I heard a vehicle, but there's a bigger issue than that.
Oh, yeah, there's a multitude of issues. Nuisance violations with junk and garbage and everything else hanging around. There's problems with the building in terms of overhangs that are in a precarious position. There's just a number of things, right, Jeff?
Yeah. Weeds, and hasn't
Yeah.
been mowed since April.
But I mean, it's visually an unsightly place. And the neighbors have to look at that. Anybody who drives down that street has to look at it. It's not, that shouldn't be the case.
I usually have between 2 and 4 yards of extra dumpster space, is why I was asking. It's a matter of resources. I mean, maybe after the meeting, I could get their address and contact them.
And do what?
Contact them and offer to help a little bit. I mean, waste removal is an issue for a lot of people. And, you know, normally I have between 2 and 4 extra yards of space per week, and it's something that they're willing to work with.
We've had about 5 or 6 months for this gentleman to do something with the property. And he's not asked for any help. We've asked him to remove it.
Joe was just wondering if you're allowed to tell him the address he's offering to.
Yeah, it's a nuisance case, it's public knowledge, you can
Yeah.
give him the address after the meeting.
Yeah, I'll give it to
After the
you.
meeting instead of.
Yeah, after the meeting, I'll give it to you,
Yeah,
sure.
I don't really like shaming people in front of,
Right.
Well, too many people did in the past.
well,
I drove by the property, and I stopped and knocked on the door, because I thought maybe our church youth group would come and clean up the yard, throw it trash, and nobody would answer. I don't know if I look like a policeman or what, but I
you're just
think,
real scary looking.
maybe so. I think somebody was in there, but nobody came to the door, because I thought, well, we could, you know, get some pickup trucks and we can haul the junk away, but
Okay. All right, economic development, Mr. Jeff Cowles.
Thank you, Mr. President. Short report tonight, especially since the mayor already handled the Home Guard building. Some good news, September unemployment for Van Wert was down to 5%. In the state, it's averaged 8%, and in the US, it's averaged 7.7%, so some positive note there. Also, the Economic Development Office has been pushing information on 2 new grant opportunities from Ohio Development Service Agencies. One is for a small business relief for businesses less than 25 employees, and also the Bar and Restaurant Assistant Fund, $2,500 for on-premise liquor permit holders. Again, anybody interested in exploring those should reach out to the Economic Development for more information. That's all I have.
All right, any questions for economic development from council? From the public? Thank you, Jeff. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Joel Penton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Parks and Recreation has no report tonight.
Any questions for Parks and Recreation? Thank you, Joel. Finance, Mr. Jeff Egley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to have that, an ordinance be prepared for the salary ordinance for 2021. Is it gonna be on emergency?
Yes.
Emergency?
There are 2 different ordinances. So the first one
We
is,
want to wait the 30 days. We're only 4 meetings.
Oh, sorry, yes.
so the first one is for service safety.
Service personnel.
Okay, yeah, we have to ask it for twice.
Okay.
There's 2 different ones.
For the service, for the service personnel, I'd like to have that motion to have the ordinance, or have law director prepare that
Okay,
ordinance.
motion to prepare an ordinance for the salary ordinance for service personnel on an emergency basis for 2021. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Murgy.
Mr. Egley?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Cowles?
Yes.
Mr. Finn?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes. And the same thing on the ordinance be prepared for the service, or safety salary. for
Okay, so
2021.
same deal, safety on an emergency for 2021. Second by Mrs. Murgy. Please call the roll.
Mr. Egley?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And Jay, those, we're gonna let those go. Multiple readings,
3 readings.
3 readings, but just the 30 days is the
Yes,
reason for,
yes.
okay. I just want to make sure that, so he knows to put them under the regular resolutions and ordinances going forward.
Martha, you know that the unemployment check that people was getting back in, is that gonna come in after the first of the year? We're gonna get it, we look
We have
at,
gotten 2. The third one that the governor asked for was like 5 times what the other 2 were or something. To my knowledge, that's not been approved, but we did just get last week our second rebate on unemployment.
okay. Is that gonna make a big difference, you think, to me? Was it gonna,
No, I mean, really what happened, we turned around the 1st of January and paid that much more in for next year's unemployment. I think we got, I think it was $60-some thousand. So,
all right. Well, in my rant earlier, is there anything else I gotta bring up in my rant? I've forgotten what I,
you need to ask for the permanent appropriations
Yes.
for 2021.
well, do I still need to do that, because I wanna have a meeting on.
Well,
Yeah,
we're still gonna run it
read
3
it
times.
times.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, then I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion to prepare an ordinance to, I guess, pass the permanent appropriations for 2021. And do we need that on an emergency for the 30 day
Yep.
to avoid? Okay,
Second.
second by Mrs. Murgy.
Mr. Egley?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
So that'll be under ordinances and resolutions on the next one.
Do I need to make that meeting now, date now, or you, for the council committee of the whole?
I'm the only one who can
Oh,
call
you can
committee
do
of the
that?
whole.
Okay.
So yeah, I have to do
Okay,
that.
okay.
Water rates.
Yeah, water rates.
Water rates. I'd like to have the,
Oh, he wants to have a meeting, right?
No,
Oh, okay,
we
I'm
can
sorry.
meet, we can talk about it at the next 3 council meetings, but we want to get the ordinance.
yeah,
Okay.
get prepared to raise the minimum for water and sewage to $1. Do I need that separate, one for water, one for
No, I
sewage?
think it's just an ordinance to set water and sewer rates. for
Yeah.
2021.
Yep. On an
Make that
emergency,
motion.
because we need them by January. On an emergency.
On an emergency.
Okay. Everybody got that? Ordinance to set water and sewer rates for 2021 on an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Murgy.
Mr. Egley?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
I think that concludes my report.
I think you're all right. You're a little flustered there, didn't you? You lost all your hair.
Yeah.
I see that, man, that's rough. All right, any questions for finance from council? From the public? Thanks, Jeff. Judiciary and annexation, Mrs. Joymer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to need help with this, but Jay, as Jay mentioned, we need legislation that will allow the Safety Service Director to serve on, what's the name of the?
District 1, or Issue 1, District 13 Public Works Commission. And we'll make sure that's proper, before the ordinance gets
Okay.
read.
To allow Jay to serve on that issue 1, District 13, whatever, and the mayor is alternate, not on an emergency basis, correct?
No, it can run this
Yeah.
course,
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to prepare. We have a second. Second by Mr. Callis.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Egley?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And a reminder that we need to set a Judiciary and Annexation Committee meeting for December 14th at 6:15 to accept the permanent zoning recommendation.
And annex, and discuss the annex.
And discuss the annexation
Okay, so,
for
Alliance.
Alliance Property Group.
Okay, so judiciary and annexation meeting, December 14th at 6:15. Topic is Alliance zoning and annexation and zoning.
And that concludes my report.
Okay, any questions for judiciary and annexation from council,
Can you pass that?
from the public? Thank you, Joy. Streets and alleys, Mr. Hellman is not here.
Right.
Mr. Marshall?
We have no report for this evening.
No report. Any questions can be directed to the Safety Service Director. Property and Equipment, Mr. Andrew Davis.
Property equipment has no report this evening.
Okay, any questions for Property and Equipment? All right, unfinished business. We already discussed code enforcement. Obviously, charter government. It no longer needs to be on unfinished business. Do I have a motion to remove it from unfinished business?
A motion.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Murray to remove it. Second, we don't need to vote on that, we just need a formal motion to remove it.
All right.
Let's see, any new business to come before council? Okay, I am going to, at the request of Mr. Egler, I am going to schedule a meeting, council of the whole. Let's see.
And that might be lengthy.
Yeah.
Do we want to do it on a non-meeting night where, so we don't have to,
And you can, another thought is, if you go an hour, are you gonna say anything new after an hour? If you meet at 5:30, it forces you to stop at 6:30.
that's what I mean. And if we're not done, I want to put it to, I want to, we only got to the end of the 3 readings. So I don't want to revisit it again. I want to have the meeting, and when we're done, know where we stand, what's going to happen.
I am looking at the last meeting of the year, Monday, the 28th. Which I think, go ahead, Jay.
No,
Still gets us for the readings in?
I'll be honest, which one are we talking about now? Because evidently Facebook, or not Facebook, Apple changed the way we enter things in calendars now, so I just had a big mess on my hands, so I apologize. You're not paying attention?
He wants to have a council of the whole meeting to discuss code enforcement.
We can do that anytime.
Okay, I thought you were going to say
Make sure we're
something.
talking about the budget.
Yes,
Okay, so that's anytime.
so I'm looking at the 28th.
Okay, and we can still,
That would be the third, reading of the budget that night, right? Am I doing my math correctly?
Yes.
That would be the third reading of the budget that night.
Well,
But
my
really,
concern is,
how's this gonna affect the budget?
I'm just answering his question.
because we're going to put, because it's probably going to take some money away from Bill and put into law enforcement.
Why, if they're not adding a position?
Because Bill is, because they're going to be code enforcement.
But if they're not adding a position, there's no money.
Well, that was my thought all along. Well, I'm not asking them to, I'm just asking them to take on a little more responsibility.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I don't think it's gonna affect the budget.
It's not.
Well, I just,
Let's, let's start with a 30-minute meeting that night.
okay.
6 o'clock, December 28th. Council of the whole, which means Drew, that'll need to be in the paper. To discuss, basically discuss code enforcement. All right,
Jeff, do we need to invite anybody special to that meeting?
It's open to the public. Anybody wants to put input in can certainly more than welcome to show up.
Council can invite anybody that they want.
Well, I'm just saying, if we're gonna be making decisions on police department, or if that's your intention, should they have a representative here?
They will.
Talk to them?
They will.
Okay, just wanna be sure.
If they're here that week, I mean, that's a tough week.
Why are we waiting till then? I'd schedule it next Monday, let's get going. I just think, I don't know, the Monday between Christmas and New Year's seems like a dumb time. My opinion only.
My intent was to give people time to ponder it and have discussions. I assumed that administration would have conversations with the chief and that type of stuff between now.
I have no idea what people's league is, but I'll bet you a large sum of money, one of the two I want to have here are probably already on vacation.
All right, well then let's change it to 6 o'clock on November 23rd.
And may I put it as, and if it's going to be, and if they're going to be here, it's probably going to be a longer than a half-hour meeting.
All right, let's go 5:30 then. 5:30, November 23rd.
I want to
Jay?
preface this, I don't even want to bother meeting if Mr. Hatcher's not going to be here.
I agree.
Yeah.
The only reason he's not here is because he's not permitted to be here tonight.
If it should turn,
Yes.
you know,
You said the 23rd?
November 23rd, 5:30. Everybody got it? Okay. Any other new business to come before council this evening? We have several ordinances on the consent agenda, all related to moving funds. So I need a motion to introduce the consent agenda. Mr. Egler, second by Mr. Callis. Drew, please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Now I need a motion, since the consent agenda is for emergency purposes, I need a motion to suspend rules for the entire consent agenda. Mr. Egler, second by Mr. Callis. Please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And now I need a motion to pass all the ordinances on the consent agenda on their first and final reading. Mr. Egler, second by Mr. Callis. And Drew, you need to read each one and then call the roll. You only need to call the roll once, but you need to read it all the way down.
Don't you need to bring them forward?
I
You
done that
have to have a
first
motion
thing.
to bring them forward?
I did that already, first thing.
Okay.
Pass first and final.
No, always.
Introduce.
Always before, yeah. we did
Introduce, we introduced.
Okay,
Suspend rules.
Okay.
They were asked to be prepared last
Right.
time.
right, I don't.
Introduce, suspend rules,
I don't think they
first and
were
final.
introduced, but okay.
No, we did that
Okay.
first time.
All right. Ordinance number 20-11-058, an ordinance to transfer funds from Fund 602 to Fund 603 and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 20-11-059, an ordinance to transfer funds from Funds 101 to Fund 302 and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 20-11-060, an ordinance to transfer funds from Funds 101 to Fund 302 and declaring an emergency. That was the same one. Is it the exact same thing?
They're very similar.
Are you on 60?
I was on 59 then to 60.
Yeah,
Those the exact same thing?
no. 60 is from Fund 550 to 101, 601, and 602.
Did they both say the same thing on here?
No. Oh, in the first paragraph they do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Doesn't matter. It's fine. The title can be the same.
No. This, on 60, it says transferring from 101 to 302. That's not what it's doing.
It's
It's
transferring
transferring from
550
550 to 101, 601, and 602.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So we'll pull that one off, we'll run that one by itself. So we'll pull, I need a motion to pull 60.
I'll make that.
Okay, so we'll pull 60 and we'll run that in all by itself under resolutions and ordinances. So Drew, you've read 58, 59. I need you to read 61 and 2.
Ordinance number 20-11-061, an ordinance to transfer funds from funds 101, 201, 301, 601, 602, 701 to Fund 550 and declaring an emergency. Ordinance number 20-11-062, an ordinance to transfer funds from Fund 560 to Funds 101, 201, 230, 301, 601, 602, and 701 and declaring an emergency. All right. Go ahead and roll.
Yeah, roll.
All right. Agler? Mr.
Yes.
Agler? Mr. Cowles?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Okay, now, I need a motion to need a motion to introduce ordinance number 20-11, an ordinance number 20-11-060. Here's what the title will read. An ordinance to transfer funds from Fund 550 to 101, 601, and 602, and declaring an emergency. Okay, the ordinance is correct, the title was not correct.
Yeah.
So, do I have a
Yes.
motion to introduce? Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Penton. Please call the roll.
Mr. Agler?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Cowles?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Okay, now I need a motion, since this is prepared under emergency, I need a motion to suspend the rules.
Yes.
Mr. Egler, second by Mr. Penton. Please call the roll.
Mr. Agler?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Cowles?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And finally, a motion to pass 20-11-060 on first and final. Mr. Egler, second by Mr. Penton. I will read it since I wrote. Ordinance number 20-11-060, an ordinance to transfer funds from Fund 550 to Funds 101, 602, and 101, 601, and 602, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Agler?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Cowles?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
All right, we have no other ordinances and resolutions to come before council this evening, correct? Mrs. Murgy?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second by Mr. Egler. Drew, please call the roll, please.
Yes.
Mr. Agler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Cowles?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, have a good